So today it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our incredible guests. So we are joined by an amazing group of leaders who are helping shape the future of battery policy. So we have with us today Nicole Cook. So Nicole drives pivotal initiatives at Panasonic Energy Co. So this is a Panasonic Group company, a global leader in high quality lithium ion batteries. As the chief of staff, she works closely with the executive leadership to champion excellence at Panasonic Energy, especially like in the manufacturing facility in Sparks, Nevada, and also the new battery cell manufacturing facility in DeSoto, Kansas. We have Bridget Bartol, who serves as NEMA's executive director of industry and regulatory affairs for the grid. She previously served as the Deputy Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor to the Secretary at the U.S. Department of Energy, as well as Deputy Director for DOE's Office of Public Affairs. So here she helped shape national energy policy, support supply chains and communications. Her deep expertise in grid policy, regulatory strategy, and federal energy leadership strengthens NEMA's work to advance grid reliability as well as deployment of next generation electrical technologies. Julia Souder is a proven leader with more than 25 years of shaping policy, markets, and innovation across the clean energy sector. As the CEO of Long Duration Energy Storage Council, she leads global efforts to accelerate technologies. Especially those are critical to reliable and net zero future. So Julia is known for uniting diverse voices, turning vision into results, and also advancing equitable, resilient energy solutions worldwide. So let's all welcome Nicole, Julia, and Bridget. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So, so this is the first question. We ask this of all our interviewees for all Volta events. So what is your state of charge today?
Fully charged.
I'll do 95%. I've had the coffee, but my children take a 5% down no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Bridget and I relate on that. Yeah, good. It was a decently good morning, although it started quite early. But I know a little bit, I feel like too much about batteries. So my fully charged is still around like 60%. So we're just going to land it there. That's positive, but
it's
not
good long term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm in the long haul. The kids are still really little.
Yeah, I got the long duration one getting ready for the weekend already.
There you go.
Hours.
I love it. So I want to start with the main topic, like the policy and regulation. So I want to ask this question to you, Nicole. So especially like with a massive new manufacturing capacity coming online, state and local incentives are clearly a factor. So however, like long-term success depends on a stable regulatory environment. So how should policymakers ensure that the incentive structures for battery manufacturing remain aligned with like the broader national goals, especially like for sustainable supply chains and domestic content like over the next decade?
Thank you so much for this question. And it's a big one and a chewy one, and one that I think a lot when I'm even like laying in bed at night and trying to like get to shut down. And I will definitely not take the next 32 minutes on it because that's how long we can legitimately talk about it. The biggest thing that I've seen, and you're so spot on with how things have gone over, the past 5 years, and we think about what we want for the next 10 and how incentives are shaping out. There's been so many huge headline, flash in the pan, 15 minutes of fame announcements because there's been so much investment into the end, the bookend, the roof of, if you will. The foundation is what we're really still working towards. And I was talking about this in some of my networking sessions, that we're trying to build this sustainable supply chain, domestic supply for all of these volumes coming online that are massive, and we are just not there. Bringing on this technology takes time. And with an industry that we're trying to stand up in a decade, which would any industry growth typically takes a full generation, 40, 50 years to really get this in a secure place. I think what I would ask, or what I do ask of policymakers, and what we talk about within Panasonic so much, is just continuing to build the relationships, because we have so much that we need to expose to about where what we need and what's in the midstream, of course, that's missing when we talk about foundational elements. And we've done a lot of, mining and aspects in the United States in the past, but it just takes quite some time. So I think building those relationships, because obviously like there's a cyclical nature when it comes to electeds and within business and leadership, and making sure that we're maintaining those relationships at a lot of levels. But if we want the macro incentives to really translate, I think there's aspects at the midstream, like I was referencing, foil and PCAM and other components, that we need to be able to get through the localization pieces. So it's broad exposure across constituents to understand what it is to need to stand up the industry. I think there are aspects where we just have to think about the policy and really reward the slower, challenging work, to ensure that, it's not just headline news for everyone. It's really just building up that middle ground. We can't be in a place like the reason that's so important is because we can't be in a place where we're just relying on a single source. We just have too much vulnerability when it comes to that for what we're expecting to do in the battery industry. And this isn't just about EVs anymore. This is really about, and this is such a great panel to have, because we're talking about standing up the grid and all of our tech that comes into play here. It's not just about, you know, it's not just about your consumer vehicle at the end of the day. So there's a lot of work to be done here, and I think it's still really about relationship building and the incentives for the broader national goals, like aligning on that goal and then really going back and working on the foundation. All of the stuff that isn't super sexy necessarily, but like just the infrastructure and the grid and the water, like there's so many pieces at play where policymakers can really help shape that those next 10 years that we're looking towards.
No, I think that's a great point. Like the relationship itself is a great part of it, right? Especially like some of these impacts are like so long term. We need to be cognizant about how we feel about building good relationships to sustain us through the whole reforms. So that kind of brings me to like the next question, like for you, Julia. So as the CEO of LDS Council, so what specific regulatory changes or like market reforms do you think are most critical right now, especially to like fairly value and accelerate the commercial deployment of long duration energy storage? Because just like Nicole pointed out, it's not just about electric vehicles; it's about so many different applications here.
Exactly. No, I love Nicole's points about like not just seeing the facade, but building the foundation. And that takes time and trust. And that's what we're really trying to do at the LDES Council is really share stories of where success happens around the world and how to inspire policymakers to know that it's not about does it work because it does. It's more about who pays for the value it provides. And so we've been really inspiring how to really work with the market criteria to really bring in all the ancillary service benefits that long duration storage provides, especially in the electrochemical battery world. There's so much there. And I think what we were trying to highlight is the success in the United Kingdom, the cap and floor. Not perfect, but it's a great starting point. It's starting to address the policies that are needed to incentivize long-term investment and give signals that there's a public-private partnership. That also is really highlighted in the work in Spain after the blackout in the Iberian Peninsula, seeing the need for long duration storage and really having that diversity of portfolios that you can pull from in times of need. I'm really incentivizing new types of, again, public-private partnerships, investment in new R&D and innovation, but at the same time, setting the right market signals and even having that connective tissue with behind the meter grid scale utility, kind of where it's on the seams. And
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing also in the United States, recent work in Virginia, 600 data centers, the largest concentration in the world. There's just so much urgency and need there that policymakers just recently updated legislation that included long duration storage, set a 4.5 gigawatt target by, again, 2045. So that long-term consistency to send those signals to show, again, it works. We just need the right policies that value the duration and value the different components that, batteries can provide overall. California has a gigawatt target for long duration storage. The big kind of momentum and focus around PJM and the capacity markets, this is exciting. And I think it's also the whole ecosystem. We're looking at industrial hubs, we're looking at urban centers, agricultural, and whether it's transportation, charging of EV, whether it's buses or 18 wheelers, like how we can utilize these different silos and
Mm-hmm.
connect them together for the whole energy infrastructure system that we're building. So I think this is really exciting to see the progress. I mean, we're seeing work in India, Australia with their LTESA. So there's a lot of movement, momentum, and I think we just got to continue to build that. We have the technologies, we have the solutions. Now we need to really make sure the policies support the advancement.
That's super. Like, especially when you have the infrastructure in place now it's more about seeing it in action.
Exactly.
Um, so that's also a point. Like, so Bridget, a special question for you here. So, having worked at both NEMA and DOE, you've kind of seen some of this policy making process firsthand. So, we talk a lot about scaling in the battery industry. And so, I want to get from your perspective, what do you think is like the biggest disconnect between policy intent and the operational reality of ramping up the battery supply chain?
Yeah, absolutely. And Nicole and Julia made great points. I think having sat at DOE during the last administration, when there was such a critical focus on one, America's amazing at innovation and research and development, and but we're not as great at scaling. And so there was kind of a national effort to make sure that we're recognizing the reliability and security premium that comes with batteries. One that's broadening transportation options for consumers here and around the globe, but now also thinking about grid reliability. This is the first time in almost 3 decades that we've had just a consistent growth in electricity demand. And it's so great to see kind of the creativity that's starting to come in the manufacturing sector to make sure that they're meeting both markets, because, one alone does not necessarily move the needle at the scale needed. And here at NEMO, we were founded in a standard setting 100 years ago, creating safety and reliability standards for the electrical system. And so just seeing the plethora of technologies that are out there and able to connect to the grid to bring power where it needs to go, either remote or urban, but also help strengthen the existing infrastructure. Batteries are really creating an opportunity to make the most of the generation that's happening so that every electron can be utilized to the best of its ability. And I think that the policy making, consistency is key. And it's really challenged when you take a global look at what it takes and what kind of, from the upstream, midstream, downstream perspective, policy needs to stay consistent because the market and the financials change so rapidly. And since there's so many different battery chemistries, you really need to be able to commit long term to developing those end products. And I think that's where sometimes policy disconnects from what the market needs because of just different movements in what incentives are available or where the premium is placed on support. And I also think that often, especially in the US, a lot of our focus and policy is on the early stage. And over time, I think we're starting to see that broaden out across commercialization, but it hasn't really found the right recipe yet. And so that's why states and, understanding a consistent goal is just so important, and making sure that there is comfort and an understanding of the technology so you can actually get policymakers aligned.
Yeah, 100%. It's super important to not just focus on the policy at the initial start, but also throughout, right? Yeah, all of you I think made really great points about this. So I had a question, especially moving into these high stakes world of policy regulation, and you're also talking about massive capital project. So it requires a different kind of risk assessment. So especially more than pure technical roles. So, what is one key skill or perspective from your time working in and around government or policy? What did you find surprisingly critical when you were transitioning to your current leadership role?
I'm happy to take that. I think having an objective in mind, but being open to evolving how you get there, I think is critical in these roles because not every state is the same, not every regulator is the same. And when you're trying to identify where the overlap is, you have to be humble in where you how fast or how you get to your objective, and being able to kind of hear from different stakeholders who may be seeing something that your perch isn't. And I think that's been the most successful in trying to find a solution.
I
It's such a good point. Go ahead, Julia.
I agree because I was thinking of just thinking of how to get so many different voices and interests at the table. I was thinking back to my days working on cybersecurity legislation. We were still trying to figure out what cybersecurity meant to different people. We were trying to also figure out how to start
Mhm.
something from scratch. And then it
Hmm.
was almost addressing the fear in the room, but also just trying to find some commonality because there was animosity as well. And it was
Hmm.
really trying to, I think, be as clear as we could to just really try to take the emotion out and just say like we all want this to happen, but how we get there, we're gonna just have to take the time to really work it through together. And I think that shared commitment of we want something together was how do we bring that collaboration? And I think it was really a dance of just kind of like how far you push it and pull with just maintaining respect. I mean, back to your point, Bridget, too, it's like that's just like we all are coming to something with like an intention and a need and a want. And how do you really kind of bring that together to show that shared value? And it's hard. And I think being as clear as you can. I have a friend that's been saying like clear is kind. The more clear you are, the kinder and the more like
Mhm.
kind of way you can do this. And I just love that mantra. So I just wanted to share it's hard, but I think taking the time to like be patient and work through it is you get to that end goal where that is so valuable because then you have everyone's input.
I agree. I think it's you both touched on the aspects that like the zoom out vantage point of resiliency because it is Groundhog's Day 24/7 and you will go and go again and go again and go again and like conversations are forgotten. So it's just really like holding composure, most certainly, and just continuing to like tell the story so that you're aligned. The common goal like has to be there. The challenge has to be well understood. That's the clarity and the kindness because otherwise, and that's hard. I mean, communication is number one in almost everything that humans do, of course. So when you have to keep going, it just takes a lot of emotional hold. Um, to not get, to not have those spikes to then have to start over again, because you're going to anyway. Even when you're as clear can be, you think you are, then others are, you just have to keep going.
Yeah, I love it. I even saw like a chat here that says clear is kind is going to be my new motto. I love it. I was just also wanted to get your thoughts like how did your career path, like for all of you, kind of lead to your current leadership role?
Laughing because I feel like it's the biggest zigzag I think anyone's ever been on. But it's when you look back, it's like, oh, it kind of makes sense. But there was no ladder. There was no, it was just I think it's all about the again, relationships around the way and things that just kind of either doors open to if you're looking, and sometimes a door would open that I wouldn't even want to pay attention to, but then somehow it'd end up there another way. I think but it is about, um, you know, we have our, 5-year plans, our 10-year plans, our 20-year plans, these like ultimate dreams you had as a kid, like where you want to be and how that evolves. But I think it's also about if you continue to learn as you're growing, there's always like, what's the next opportunity to help me grow and learn? And I think if you're open to
Hmm.
that, then it really kind of helps you move into pieces and be a little daring. To be honest, this role I have, I was like jumping from a, North America, kind of even Western focus, had some experience around the world, but just thought that I knew I wanted to do this. I could do it with a support system. And so putting my name in here to kind of jump into this role with a huge growing opportunity was scary, but I'm super glad I did it. I mean, but it's having the support system around to help you too. But I think it's worth taking the risk because there could be amazing opportunities, amazing challenges, but how else do you grow?
Mm. For me, my last two roles, the two roles I've had with Panasonic didn't exist when I came into play. So it was really just like, to Julia's point, being really vocal about what your superpowers are and where you really feel like you excel. Because if your passion, firstly in the mission, like for me, it's all about mission driven, but then how does my passion push the mission, right? Because that role balance is really what helps excel you. So for my roles, my past two roles, director of program management and chief of staff, did not exist at Panasonic before I started talking with my leadership and manager and others about what it is that I really enjoy doing and what my work-life boundaries were even. And that's how I kind of got to where I was. And it that has to be in a safe space. So you have to really build the relationship with the people that you work with. And that's not always easy. And then there's the aspects of one of my former bosses and mentors talked about was a triangle approach of like your performance is really high. The role that you're currently in, there's someone that could backfill it, and there's a role open. So some of those things you can't control. You can really only control your performance, but you still have to have the conversations, and maybe it's building your team to make sure that there's somebody coming into play. But then it's about being really, risk, friendly to saying like, this is what I'm looking for, like really taking the leap and reaching. Maybe it's not always going to be with your current business, but if you don't talk about it, then you're never going to get it out there.
Yeah, I feel like that last point, Nicole, like just being willing to move from what you're doing when it's appropriate and you feel like it's both something that you can grasp onto and learn from. I feel like I continuously am trying to learn every time I take on a new role. I'm not here to say I know it all. It's I have a skill that could benefit from this, and I also think it could test me in a way that like I didn't expect. And so I actually started more in like policy advocacy, strategic comms world, and then transitioned over time into a like slightly more, policy technical experience, like going over to the deputy chief of staff role. I had not been in that role before. No one knows what a deputy chief of staff is. But you're both a manager, you're a policy and like technical translator, you're a representative of an organization, and you're just trying to make sure everyone's rowing in the same direction. But it gives you just unlimited opportunity to learn both from outside stakeholders and inside folks because it's really a team dynamic. Like you can't do it all alone. And like, how can we all get there together? And so going from communications where it's a translation value, right? Like my skill is I can translate really wonky things. Great. Because you don't know what level of person you're speaking with on a topic. And so I get to know, an inch deep and a mile wide of topics. But when I really need to dive in and get the mile deep, I can do that. And I think just being willing to say, like, I actually don't know what you just said. Can you do that again? Because if I don't understand it and I work with you, that means someone else doesn't understand it. And I think that's really been
100%.
the key is like, if I'm saying like, wait, we work together every day and that didn't make sense, we should try that again, And
Yes,
just
yes,
being
yes,
open
yes.
about it. Sometimes it's like direct, but it really does help all of us learn.
Yeah, this is especially important. Like, it's a bridge building experience in some ways, right? Like, and in some ways, like all these, like when you see it's recommended to kind of reach out, okay, if you don't understand anything, how can we make this better for the next person? This is super
Mhm.
important. So all your roles kind of involve coalescing so many different voices, like from the industry, from the government, technology, especially around like a unified policy objective. So one question, like especially from the Women in Batteries initiative, is like, what would you give? What advice would you give to like young women leaders, especially to build this powerful coalition or consensus around new technologies or even for like challenging regulatory reforms?
I would say define the why. There's so much when you're building a new industry, there are so many different ways. There's compelling arguments in a lot of ways. So just be really crisp and clear, coming back to clarity on Like what's your why? What's the purpose? So that you're all really level set because there's so many niche examples and you only need one to really garner support. More is certainly better, but just be clear. And I think that that's a launching pad to build the coalition around for sure.
We have over 300 members at NEMA, and then the grid sector is like kind of one of the larger ones because grid touches so many things. And what I've just my approach is like creating a set of principles over like key topic areas that people can either align on or recognize they're on a different part of it so that they can find a home. I think it's really important that people feel like they feel seen or heard in what your priorities are. And then from there, like finding that core of, what are our principles that we can agree on because we're about to go out and find fellow stakeholders who care about the same broad objective, but maybe don't have our perspective. And so having those like core principles for each of like your, 2 to 3 key priority areas allows one, me to stay sane, and two, them to feel engaged in a way that helps move the ball forward, even if the ultimate policy outcome only has a percentage of what your principles are. It shows where you made the difference.
I'd say don't give up. This is going to get even harder, but you have groups now we can work with. We have like, to Bridget's point, there's a collective voice means so much more. And to Nicole's point, you've got to find that collective why. It's so empowering. And use different data points to help you, like as an
Mm.
inspiration that, okay, we know in 5 years, long duration storage prices are going to drop even by 40%. That's exciting. Let's all work on that together. So it's like bringing in these pieces to help us not give up on the constant pushes. And I think a personal thing too is know that there's lots of different types of coaches out there to help you. And in your next job description or even in your next performance review, ask for a coach, ask for training, and really have that kind of help you build also do different kind of confidence levels to help. I think it's really important. So when you're going back to don't giving up, you've got a stronger tool set that kind of really helps you get, continue the passion, the motivation, and that strength to work through. As we know things when they get harder, it just means you get to grow more and it means you're on the right path.
Yeah, I think it's very well said, like from all of you, like Nicole, Julia, and Bridget. Like it's about like the collective I and getting together and coaching. And there's so many ways. Like there are people who have done it, and it is a very, very hard path to get there. But we're all in this together. So I think that's great. So I want to kind of wrap up the interview with like a quick lightning round. So this is going to be quick questions, quick answers. So whatever comes to your mind first. So this is like my favorite part of the whole interview. Um, so question one, what is one habit every policy leader needs to cultivate?
Openness to listen. And I was thinking to say kindness. That's always nice.
Yeah. Humility. I think knowing that you're not going to get everything you want, so a little humility is okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good one. I was thinking something along the lines of being like how multilingual you need to be in the form of translation, like operational translation from the business perspective. Like, don't write something that I have to have a lawyer, an accountant read. Like, I mean, I just want to understand, like, to help me help you.
Actually, that's a great point. And don't
Nice.
let the perfect be the enemy of the good, because if you're waiting to make it perfect, or the delay sometimes is more costly.
Yeah.
So have some
Yeah,
flexibility there. Oh, great point.
100%. What's the best career advice you've received?
This always sticks with me because I started out in government repairs, but it's like everyone is on a spider web. And so you will find someone in some way that has a connection, and that's the best way to try to think about how you can relate to someone.
I think mine is probably from like Tesla days of launching and ramping of like, do you need it now or now? And does it need to be done or done? And then there
Done.
was another one with an expletive, done, something done. Um, and that really stuck with me from the aspect of like how much, not necessarily projects or programs or whatever we're like launching on the product, but even for yourself that you get to continue to rev. Like you're revising, you're like changing and adapting and learning and growing like all the time. So whatever you did, you can keep on going. Like it's never done. It's never done.
Hmm. There's so many that pop in my mind, and I love what Bridget Nicole just said too. And I just would go back to with the urgency that we all feel constantly and just the pressure points. It's like have your vent space, your whether you use AI or something, like you can just write stuff down so you don't put it in the email, you don't put it in the chat, you just like
Mm-hmm.
let it out there, take a pause, because once you get that out of your system, like, oh, it's not that bad, or oh my gosh, it doesn't really mean this, and I needed that room to breathe, so then you can really kind of then focus. I think making that space for yourself is so important. It's so hard to do, but it does pay off.
Nice.
Indeed.
I have a last fun question before we open it up for Q&A. So, what is your go-to charge up activity outside of work?
Being with my kids in nature.
Oh,
Yeah, taking a walk with like my dog and my two kids in the wagon is how I decompress. Yeah.
I like any I love the nature approach, but I appreciate it without my kids, and the silence is really helpful to just like I drive my car, the radio's not even on. Like I just need nothing just to like float away. But yeah, I completely agree on the nature front. And I love my kids. I just don't need them all the
Different age groups. Yeah,
Yeah. Depends on the day.
time. Definitely.
totally.
Please go talk to somebody else. Please touch someone else. Yes.
man, this is so great. I really enjoyed talking to you. This is like a great, insightful discussion. Thank you so much, Julia, Bridget, and Nicole.
Thank
So I
you.
just want to open up the floor to ask any questions if you people want to talk about it. I think there's some questions in the chat as well.
There's one on skills gap, and I think I have a team of majority of women, which is amazing, and men too. I think the diversity is important, but I just really like to encourage everyone about you like as Bridget was saying, you can learn something technical, you can be an engineer, you can move into policy. Like don't feel so rigid in a title or a position. There is flexibility there that if you want to move around, you should. And I think the adaptability is a skill set that is going to be really important, and a willingness to learn. And I think also just showing your value, relationships are going to be key, because everyone's going to be like, I can use AI, but I need to access this person or this policymaker, and how you do that is going to be a really important skill set.
I think we hit on one thing, especially being a woman in a field that is heavily male dominated, is like, don't be afraid to speak up. And socialize pre-meeting, post-meeting. If there was a point that you feel like was made and people agreed, they nodded, but it didn't get like the cohesion at the end, find a way to re-engage. Find the person who would have value in that work stream or that idea and bring it back. Like just because someone passed on the idea that one time, so many thoughts are going through people's heads. Like it is not because you said it. It's you just need to seed the idea so that it gets there. And I think that like allows people to learn something new, and it also allows you to grow because you've maybe seeded an idea that you can now engage on as well.
Totally agree.
I think we have a question from Bahar.
Thank you. Thank you all for all the advice you shared. It's really helpful. I was wondering, as someone who's coming from a research background, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge for women to enter other fields in the industry, like, to show that they have operations experience when they come from a research background. So I was wondering if you had any advice for how someone from a research background or someone early career could present themselves to experts or whoever is recruiting for the industry to show them that they are also well versed in terms of industry trends, and they're not just academic, or they're not just capable in research. And how do people move from research into more operational roles, more cross-functional roles, if you will, in the industry, in your experience?
For me, and I would say like in the manufacturing space, like anybody coming from higher ed or R&D or anything like that, like there's a lot of great experience there, but it's just then about operationalizing it. So I think expressing interest and desire to like take and learn from the lab experience and take it further, because that's such a vacuum and so narrow, but just expressing in an interview situation or via your resume and other groups that you may be interested in, that you can go bigger and broader. because that's just like continuing to churn really quickly. I think that's the biggest thing because we're always looking for people that have experience with scale and not being fearful of change, which can be kind of just slow moving because we move so fast. So it's kind of just like expressing that and the desire to be in that space for us.
Not every researcher is the same. I working in the Department of Energy. You get to meet like some of the best researchers in the world. And I think keep in mind that the amount of engagement you have with a subject, people of all different kinds to be able to create your product is a skill in and of itself, like identifying the right person, bringing a convening together, helping to like draw out information. That in and itself is a skill, but then it's how you take that learning and don't just put it in a paper. You're making sure it's elevated and getting to other stakeholders because you're applying it to its relevance. I think to what Nicole said, like taking that and showing that you can do it in your world and can apply that to another part of the company or a different industry, it is the hard, tangible skill from that. Because research is not something that everyone can do, but not also everyone can convene and take what they've put into the world and elevate it. And I think that's where the hard skill comes from.
And I would just add 2 points on that because these are great points by Nicole and Bridget. Is that one, Substack, start writing stuff on Substack and tie and link to other Substack articles that you admire, you want to debate with, and then also then tie that to LinkedIn, and then even continue to, if you want to be in the research technical side, abstracts at conferences, always looking out for different things. And then there's so many great women organizations now. Women in Climate has a great speaker base. So add your name to speaker bases, like databases. I think that's also really important.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think we're nearing 9, so I'd like to wrap up the questions. Thank you so much for joining us today, Julia, Bridget, and Nicole, and to all the wonderful virtual attendees. I also want to quickly share with you some of the upcoming Volta events for you to kind of join. We have the Women in Batteries meetup at the Battery Show Europe, the Thermal Runaway 5K, and Volta Cafe, and then there are also guided tours and the Battery Social. Yeah, so please feel free to join us if you can. And I just want to say, like, Julia, Bridget, and Nicole, thank you so much for your insights today. I feel like your accomplishments in the industry are like absolutely incredible. And I feel super empowered. I think we all feel very empowered to pursue a career in battery policy. So it's really nice to see like women leaders at the top. So thank you so much for your time today. And it was wonderful having you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.